Hello and welcome to the Motoring News Zone, the show we take you for all the biggest stories in the world of cars right now. This week, millions of stolen vehicles have been seized by customs before leaving the country, elderly drivers are set for tougher tests to keep their licenses, and the Chevy Camaro is set to return soon, but not in the form that you knew it from before. If you're watching this video on YouTube, skip to the timestamps in the video description below to watch the story that you are most interested in. And without further ado, let's dive in. The Chevrolet Camaro is coming back. After a long time away, the Chevy Camaro is going to return, but not in the form that you once knew it as. Of course, the Camaro is one of the most iconic muscle cars in American auto history. A lot of older people will probably know it as the car that was meant to challenge the Ford Mustang and did a pretty good job of doing so. People of my generation, millennials, will probably know it more for the Transformers film, of course, being the car that Bumblebee transformed into and Megan Fox very noticeably, shall we say, leant over the hood of. You know what I'm talking about when it comes to that. But let's not talk about Megan Fox. Let's talk about cars. Let's talk about the Camaro because, like I said, it's coming back, but not in the form that you're used to. Is this going to be a good thing? Is this going to be a success? Let's have a look. So the Camaro will no longer be a muscle car and no longer be a coupe. It's going to be a fastback SUV, which is going to directly challenge the Mustang Mach-E. Of course, the Mach-E being the electric version of the Ford Mustang. But the Camaro is not going to come back in the form you once knew it. In fact, it'll be an electric car that directly challenges the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Of course, the electric version of the muscle car. And by all accounts, the Mustang Mach-E is a decent car. It's a very popular one, and General Motors wants to challenge that, and this is their way of doing it. In fact, two-door vehicles are very rare these days. There's not that many of them that are being made unless it is a supercar or something like that. So if you actually make an electric two-door version of the Camaro, like it's being rumoured, this could well be something incredible. There were rumours that it was going to come back as an SUV or perhaps even an electric SUV, but the electric muscle car does make a lot more sense. But how quick is it going to be? A lot of people are wondering how many horses are going to be under the hood. Well, of course, if it is an electric vehicle, we're going to measure it in kilowatt hours instead. And Chevrolet will probably use their 85 kilowatt batteries for the lower end, and then for the higher end one, we could expect anything up to 190 kilowatts, which is huge. But of course, being an electric motor, it would be instant acceleration. There's no torque curve there. So they'd just fly away at that point. Actually see a Chevrolet Camaro EV that has up to 1,000 on over the years as well. There's no reason why they can't do that in the coming years as well with Camaros. Vehicle, is it going to come back as an SUV? I really hope it comes back as an electric muscle car. Having a Camaro that's an SUV just doesn't seem right. It really does seem like they should call it something else at that point. That's not really the appropriate name for that kind of vehicle. But your thoughts are appreciated as always in the comments below, guys. Here's a big story for you guys. Stolen luxury cars and pickup trucks worth more than $3 million have been seized by US Customs in Houston, Texas. This is a big score for sure, but how did this happen? Where did these cars come from? Everything else in between. I got the full story for you here, guys. Anyway, let's have a look at this. So the US Customs and Border Protection have seized 32 stolen vehicles worth more than $3 million at the port of Houston and the port of Galveston in Texas since October, the agency said in a news release. The ongoing initiative of the agency is to target international criminal organizations that exploit global trade routes for illegal activity. Since October 2024, the division of the agency responsible for enforcement at the ports of Houston and Galveston recovered luxury sedans and pickup trucks that have been reported stolen across the US. But it is not unique to Texas. In fact, Rusty Payne, that's a great name, Mr. Payne, said, who is a CBP public affairs officer, said the following on this, that this is a problem at every seaport in the United States, that they see organized criminal activity related to stolen cars, and a lot of times they are connected to a trade-based money laundering activities overseas as well. The 32 stolen vehicles recovered at the port would have been illegally transported to countries in the Middle East, West Africa, Central America, and South America, according to Mr. Payne. He said that stolen cars are often shipped to other countries and sold at a 20% markup, and the proceeds are then laundered with drug money to make it appear that all the money came from the sale. Unsurprisingly, US Customs are trying to crack down on this, and they are flagging vehicles for examination before they leave the United States. And what happened here was that they identified inconsistencies in the paperwork of the vehicles, and they have got them. So yeah, honestly, not a big surprise. You know, these stolen cars are very much popular. They do get stolen from people in wealthy countries and they get shipped out to, in general, poorer countries or people that will basically turn a blind eye to this sort of thing. It happens all the time in my country, the UK, as well. The amount of vehicles that are seized trying to go through the Channel Tunnel into France and into Europe that have been stolen in the UK is absolutely huge. They do seize a lot of vehicles, and I can imagine in places like Texas, in places like New York and California, Florida, anywhere that ships to South America, Central America and beyond, it's going to be very prevalent as well. But I tell you what as well, I imagine that is the tip of the iceberg. How many vehicles have actually gone through the port and not been caught? I bet it's more than 3 million worth. It usually is in these kind of scenarios. They often boast about getting these big drug operations where they, seize $5 million worth of a certain substance, but 50 million's going through every other week. It's that kind of thing, really. But yeah, your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Should more be done about this? Can more be done about this? Your thoughts in the comments below, as always. It's fair to say that the auto industry in the US is very much in a state of flux at the moment. Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, has said that the tariffs placed upon the American auto industry will change the industry worldwide irreparably. It will never go back to what it was before because of these sweeping changes. And it's fair to say things are changing. Things are shifting gears right now. But why is this? What has happened recently to very much double down on this viewpoint? Here's the full story, guys. I'm going to go into what is changing right now in the car market and where we kind of go next from here. What will likely happen next? Of course, we need to talk about the tariffs. The tariffs always come into these conversations. Earlier in the year, of course, Donald Trump did put a 25% tariff on all foreign imported vehicles into the United States, including car parts as well. So even if you manufacture your vehicle in the US, if it's made from parts that are imported from outside the US, they are subject to tariffs. Now, since then, some countries have struck a trade deal. The UK, Japan, South Korea, and the European Union, to name just a few. In fact, the president has used his sway to try and keep last for. And this is all, of course, despite the fact that some of the giants of the industry like Ford, General Motors, and Toyota all stating that they're going to lose billions of dollars this year alone in tariff costs. But on average, like I said, the prices of cars aren't really going up that much. In June 2025, the price of an average new car in the United States only rose by 0.2%. Well, the way inflation is right now, that's probably less than that in a month. So overall, the real value of a car has actually decreased. But keeping the prices low has helped out in other ways. Some car manufacturers like Ford are reporting record sales. In the second quarter of 2025 alone, Ford sold over 1 million vehicles, 1.11 to be exact, which is a 6.6% increase year on year compared to 2024. And essentially, the reason why all these sales are so high is because of the incentives. A lot of manufacturers are putting on some very big incentives, which are really helping drive the sales, even if people have less money in their pocket. A lot of people are, of course, taking advantage of the prices being as low as they are for now. How long will this last for, though? It's kind of a test of who is going to blink first, really. And that could very much be a bubble that eventually bursts. Not least especially when it comes to electric vehicles, which, of course, lose their tax incentives, their tax credits, at the end of September. So the sales of electric vehicles will likely plummet from October. But right now, they're doing very well because people are trying to get their vehicles before that cutoff. They don't want to lose out on that bonus. But of course, the prices that people are paying overall when it comes to financing these cars is going up massively as well. I brought you a stat the other week saying that 20% of American households have at least one vehicle that have $1,000 payments in terms of their finances every single month, which is up hugely on the same time last year. So even though the overall real value of these cars is decreasing, the interest rates on a lot of these loans is actually going up, which of course contributes to higher overall costs every month. But guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Is this going to be maintained? Can the manufacturers keep the prices of these vehicles low for much longer? What is going to break the dam? When is the final straw on the camel's back going to be broken? I want to hear what you have to say on this in the comments below as always. I think it's more than fair to say that Ford right now are sweating. They are very worried about the competition, both in the United States, but also coming from abroad as well, most notably from China and their electric vehicle trade. Their CEO, Jim Farley, has made no secret about how he's concerned and basically said that the US auto industry has to adapt, or for lack of a better term, it will die. So in short, the auto industry in the US can't keep going on like it is. But is it going to keep doing that? What is going to happen? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Let's have a look, guys. Got the full story for you here on the channel as always. So last year, Jim Farley commuted in a car that was not made by Ford or any of their subsidiaries. This was effectively to scope out the competition, to see what was going on with the latest developments from other manufacturers of automobiles around the world. He effectively spent 6 months driving around in a Xiaomi SU7 from China. And this electric sedan is one of the world's most impressive cars. It can accelerate faster than many Porsches currently on the market, and believe it or not, it has a giant touchscreen that allows you to prepare your house, get your heating on and put your lights on before you return home, and also has a built-in AI assistant too. And how much does it cost? Well, in China, it currently sells for around $30,000 US. And in fact, he made no secret about this, did Farley. He was really impressed and he called it, quote, fantastic. And unsurprisingly, Farley imported a Xiaomi SU7 to the United States to basically strip it down and have a look at how it works and how this technology can be adapted into Ford going forwards. Now, fortunately for Farley, these are not currently on sale in the United States, but will this change? Well, probably not under President Donald Trump, but who knows what's going to happen at the next election. A new president could, of course, loosen the restrictions on Chinese automobiles, and at that point, it could be really dangerous for the likes of Ford, so you could see why they are worried about it. But this is far from the first time that the US auto industry has been concerned about developments in East Asia. Of course, back in the 1980s, Japan was projected to overtake the United States in its global influence, but that never happened. They entered a recession in the 1990s that lasted for about 30 years. Whether something like that will happen with China is yet to be seen. It's a very different situation, but the threat is undoubtedly there. Just look at what's happening in Europe. When it comes to electric vehicles, in Europe, the Chinese manufacturers are really gaining ground. Here in the UK, for example, 25% of electric vehicles are predicted to be Chinese made by 2030. That's just 5 years away. And I'm already seeing a lot of BYDs going around the roads. They're definitely becoming more popular here. And it's even more prevalent in countries like Germany as well. So what are Ford doing to try and curtail this threat? Well, surprisingly, they're actually going to make a new pickup truck. In their Louisville, Kentucky plant, they are going to produce electric trucks that are going to start from $30,000 in 2027, a budget option to the F-150 Lightning, which retails currently for around double that price. And in fairness, the Lightning pickup truck is the most popular electric vehicle pickup truck in the United States. It has overtaken the Cybertruck from Tesla. Obviously not a pickup truck, but you get my picture. Officially it is, but unofficially it's not really. But yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Are Ford right to be worried about the Chinese electric vehicles coming into the United States? Are they doing the right thing to try and adapt? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So I've been away for a few days, guys. I've not been able to react to news as quick as possible. Not as quick as I usually do anyway. And there has been a big story here. Ministers are considering making changes to the driving license laws here in the UK, including potentially mandating eye tests to over 70s. And if they fail these eye tests, if their vision is deemed not to be good enough, then they could have their license taken off of them. They will be banned from driving. Very bold move, interesting move. I'm sure people have got a lot of opinions on it, but let's have a look first at what has been said about this, guys. Shout out to the BBC News for covering this story because, yeah, this is a massive one and over 5,600 comments. People have got opinions about this, fair to say, but let's go through it here. Motorists over 70 could be banned from the roads if they fail compulsory eye tests under a radical shake-up of driving laws in Great Britain. Plans also include reducing the drink driving limit both in Wales and England to be in line with Scotland's lower limits and giving people points on their licence for not wearing a seatbelt. The move comes after an inquest into 4 deaths caused by drivers with failing eyesight saw a coroner call the UK's licensing system the laxest in Europe. The changes are expected to be included in a new road safety strategy set to be published by the government in the autumn, with ministers believing that the current safety messaging is not working. In no other circumstance would we accept 1,600 people dying on the roads each year, with thousands more seriously injured, costing the NHS more than £2 billion per year, a government source told the BBC. This Labour government will deliver the first road safety strategy in a decade, imposing tougher penalties on those breaking the law, protecting road users and restoring order to our roads, the source said. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has said she supports the plans to bring in compulsory eye tests for drivers over 70. There's a shock. I mean, people over 70 on average do vote for that party, so yeah, that's a surprise, I'll be honest. I think we need to make sure the people driving on our roads are using the streets safely, she added. In April, Senior Coroner for Lancashire Dr James Adley sent a report to Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander to say action should be taken to prevent future deaths after he found enforcement of visual legal standards for drivers being unsafe. Following the inquest, a source close to the Transport Secretary told the BBC that the government accepted that the rules need to be reassessed. The UK is one of only 3 European countries to rely on self-reporting of visual conditions affecting the ability to drive. Now, a new requirement being prepared by the Transport Secretary could make eye tests for the over 70s compulsory when they renew their driving licence every 3 years. However, Peter Brown, 73 from Great Yarmouth, told the BBC that he has tried to get an appointment to get his sight checked but is unable to get one. He says that he has glaucoma and reported it to the DVLA, but that has not stopped him driving. I'm quite frustrated, he said. If it was found that my eyesight was not of a sufficient level to drive, would it be my fault or the NHS for not being able to give me an appointment? Well, I mean, you can get your sight checked in other places other than the NHS. A lot of people use private companies like Specsavers to do so. I mean, I know it's not always convenient, especially for more elderly people, but that is an option that you have. You don't have to go through the NHS for an eye test. As far as I'm aware anyway. I know it's not free and these people sometimes don't have money to be able to pay for that, and that is a problem. But it's not impossible either. And regardless of all that as well, if your eyesight was bad, would getting it tested change your eyesight? If your eyesight is bad and you're not able to drive because of it, then it should be quite a good thing that you shouldn't be able to drive. Surely, if you're not in a safe condition to be able to drive, then why should you be allowed to? Now, obviously, these limits are subjective. I'm sure there's going to be some people that will say that they'll take too much when it comes to the actual limits for this, but that's a different discussion for a different day. Edmund King, president of the AA, defended drivers like Peter over the age of 70, saying they are still relatively safe, although acknowledged bringing in a compulsory eye test was a small price to pay for safety. When you look at road deaths, the big peaks are with the young, new drivers and then older drivers. Although older drivers, it does tend to be those over 80 and 85, he told BBC's Radio 4. Quoting stats from road safety charity Break, Mr. King added that 1 in 5 young drivers crash in their first year and over 1,500 young drivers are killed or seriously injured in a car each year. That is the big problem. There is a big problem when it comes to young drivers for sure. There's also a problem when it comes to elderly drivers, and they both need dealing with for sure. How you deal with the younger drivers, I don't know. That's a much more complex situation, but the elderly drivers, this I think would probably help, to be honest. And then also under consideration, like I said in the intro for this video, is the drink driving limit. I mean, personally for me, that is a very complicated issue, but I've said this before on drink driving videos when I've come to this, and I do really get the vibe that people disagreeing with me here are those that break the law when it comes to this. Because basically the rule of thumb in England, for the most part, if you're having a meal, you can probably get away with 1 or 2 pints, with 1 glass of wine or something like that, right? If you go over that, you're probably going to be over the limit. It's all down to your weight and how you process alcohol. It's all to do with the amount of alcohol in your blood system. That is what is effectively tested when you do the breathalyzer test. But I've said it before, like if you can't go to a social function without having a drink of alcohol, then maybe you're the problem. Maybe you have a problem. I'm just saying. And those that disagree with me on that, I think you're probably voicing your frustrations because, you know, maybe you're incapable of doing that. I don't know. But back on the topic of elderly drivers, I mean, yeah, the big spikes, it gets further up. It gets a much bigger spike after 80. Maybe 80 would be a reasonable limit rather than 70. But the fact remains that if your eyesight is not good enough for you to be able to drive safely, then why should you be allowed on the roads at that point? When I did my driving test, if I did my driving test without these on, I would have failed. You know why? Because I wouldn't have been able to read the license plate at the distance. I need these to be able to see a long distance. And yes, you can get corrective lenses and they will help with your eyesight, but there's limits to it. Some people's eyesight is just so bad that even with the best glasses, they still can't see very well. And trust me, If you try and drive a car, even for a few minutes, without corrective lenses, with eyes that are not good enough to see long distance and perceive hazards, that is basically, hazard perception is a big part of the practical test and the theory test. If you're unable to do that, then I'm sorry, but you really shouldn't be driving. And I know it's a big part of people's independence. I know it is. And I know people don't like having that freedom taken away from them. But people don't like being in car crashes either. How would you feel it if an 80-year-old man or woman crashed into you because they couldn't see you and you got severely injured because of that? It can happen. It's unlikely to happen. It's unlikely to happen. A lot of elderly crashes, if I'm not mistaken, are relatively low speed, whereas young people's crashes are relatively high speed for the most part. So that is just as dangerous, if not even more dangerous, in my opinion. And there's got to be something done with that, but that's a separate issue. For me, I think this is sensible. 70 maybe is a little low. Maybe do it at 80. But I think the premise of it is pretty solid. So to be honest, I wouldn't be against it if it came in. But I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me on that one. Get your thoughts in the comments below. So we already know about Elon Musk and Donald Trump and how the best of friends have now become the worst of enemies. And this extends to their families as well, because Kai Trump has now dumped her Cybertruck. She's finally come to her senses and got rid of that POC. I could call it a POS very easily as well. I'm not talking about point of sale. But anyway, let's skip past that. Let's have a look at what's happened here, guys. I love this kind of gossip when it comes to this stuff. Wasn't really too in tune to the likes of Kai Trump and the extended Trump family, but I do like reading about stuff like this. So let's have a look at what has happened here. So if you're wondering who Kai Trump is, she is one of the president's granddaughters. She's 17 years of age and she shared photos from the first day of her senior year of high school, but posed next to a Cadillac Escalade rather than the special edition Cybertruck that she got as a gift from Elon Musk. Now this is a big change from last year. She called her Cybertruck, quote, the Cyber Beast last year, but clearly she's not too bothered about going around in it now. In fact, she even posted a video of her racing in the vehicle as recently as March of this year. But of course, that was all before her granddad and Mr. Musk had their very public falling out, to put it very mildly. Let's not get into the allegations that Musk made here, but if you've seen the stories, you know what I'm talking about. It's not good. And if you're wondering, yes, Kai is an influencer. I really shouldn't talk too much rubbish about that because I am a content creator, but I would never call myself an influencer. She hasn't gone as far as to publicly criticize Elon Musk, though. But she has said in the past, as recently as November last year, that he is basically her uncle. I bet she doesn't feel that way now, to be honest. But yeah, there you go, guys. That's essentially it. I mean, we already know why this has happened. It is not a big surprise. She's been very smart in not insulting Musk or getting dragged into the war of words like that. You know, even if you're in the right, for a lack of a better term, even if people agree with you, it's best to stay out of things like that because, yeah, let those adults who act rather immature at times deal with their problems. If you want to change your car and distance yourself from that Cybertruck, I got no problem with that. Nothing to do with Elon Musk, just because it's a terrible vehicle. Let's be honest here, guys. But your thoughts in the comments on this are appreciated as always, guys. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you want to see more like this. Have a great time this weekend. See you very soon.